Got it. Okay, thank you everybody for being here and thank you for your introductions. So my name is Ingo Rauth and currently I don't work in academia. I work as a senior consultant. So I'm basically tasked with designing educational experiences for leaders. So we have a bunch of facilitators. I'm at Refinery Leadership, and they basically carry out the programs that I design on different subjects. That being said, design thinking or design your life is a passion project of mine. I have been teaching this since roughly 2011. And I say roughly because in 2011, there was some stuff online. There wasn't a book. And but there was a frustration on my side that I realized that I wouldn't or I didn't apply what I know about behavior science and design to my own life. And it started with a little challenge. It was New Year. We entered 2011, and I thought I should work out. And so my mind was like, I should work out every day for the next 30 days. And I have like a lot of determination if I want something. So I started doing that. First day went great. I felt amazing. I did my workout, checked the box. Second day, my whole body was in pain. And I was like, why did I sign up for this? And then I dragged myself through the month. In doing so, I wondered, isn't there a better way? And before, I always thought about like behavior science and habits and like design as something that I apply to others. I'm a trained industrial designer. I'm a trained graphic designer. I've worked in both fields. I teach and I've worked in design thinking and service design. So like it's easy to apply it to others, but it wasn't that easy to apply it to myself. So at the end of the month, or like towards the end of the month, I decided to redesign that challenge. And for me, that was when I first started to combine at that point design thinking and behavior science. So most of you might be familiar with frameworks like B equals MAP by BJ Fogg and like other behavior science formulas, frameworks, and ideas out there. And I realized that it's pretty easy actually to understand my own needs, to understand like, okay, what's getting in the way and how can I design a better workout for myself. That kind of started my first steps, and I like learned during that time about like the Life Design Lab, or at the time, like there wasn't, I don't know if it was called the Life Design Lab, but I learned about Design Your Life and started to experiment. I started courses for my peer PhD students. And then in 2013, I run my first life design class or Design Your Life class. I didn't had any formal training. Nobody told me how to do this. There was no like framework other than like I saw a couple of slides online, what they do in Stanford, some of which made sense to me, some of which didn't make sense to me because I didn't have any context. And so I tried or I started puzzling things. And some of you might have done the same thing. There's some fantastic books out there. So for example, Aisha Berzell like has a book that's called Designing Your Life, which if you haven't read it, it's really fun. There are a lot of great exercises in it. And so I started putting things together and basically experimented. First course went very well. And I was kind of surprised by it. And I started teaching more and more Design Your Life in mainly Madrid at IA Business School. So with executive or like part-time MBA students as well as full-time MBA students, and later on also on the bachelor level. On top of that, I also taught design thinking or Design Your Life on the side to groups of people that are not affiliated with any academic environment, just to see what worked and what didn't work and how is it different. Now, one of the things that I really would like to talk about to you today, which is for me, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is better understanding yourself, better understanding the direction in life that you are taking, and better understanding like, why am I drawn to these things that I'm drawn to? And here we have a couple of tools in the book, and there are many more out there that help you to better understand like what it is that you want, but it doesn't necessarily help you to figure out or to understand why you want what you want. Like, where's this coming from? How do you know what like makes your life fulfilling? How do you know what is purpose to you? How do you know what derives or where do you derive pleasure from or kind of a sense of fulfillment or meaning? And for me, that has always been a major driver in my life. I always love to understand, like, okay, why am I doing things? And to be honest with you, when something didn't make sense to me anymore, I quit the job and I moved on, which is part of the reason why I had more than 12 jobs. I still remember a conversation with Bettina at one point in time, and we were in Munich, I think, or Frankfurt, can't remember, train station, coffee shop close to the train station. And she said, Ingo, the only thing in your life that's constant is change. And I'm like, yeah, that didn't sit well with me. And it didn't sit well with me because, yes, there is a lot of change in my life, but I always did it because there was something like missing or something lacking, and I was looking for meaning. And with that, like I had this lens of, okay, how can I support my students and people going through a life design workshop in understanding what's meaningful and purposeful to them? And so this over the last couple of years or last 10 years kind of like put me on this journey to develop a little outline or a little framework that I want to share with you today. And feel free to use it if you want to. Ingo, please give us the reference. I see it in the chat. Sorry. To the first book you mentioned. Yes, Aisha Biazel. So Aisha is A-Y. Bettina, you might be able to find it. So just look for Design Your Life. It's a red book. I really highly recommend it. A couple of good exercises. My favorite is superheroes, superpowers. If you haven't done that exercise, like I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, so with that, I want to give you a quick look behind the curtain, and I want you to like put your critical thinking hat on, because what I'm going to share with you is something that I made up based on positive psychology. I'm not claiming this is the end all be all. It's also not entirely news. You might have seen something like this before. The only thing that my intention here is to provide you with a better understanding where, for example, passion, purpose, and meaning can come from, and how we can help our learners to better understand what are the ingredients for that in their lives. So I'm sharing my screen with you, and these are slides that I have been using in my life design workshop. So feel free to make screenshots if you want to, as long as you cite me. I have no trouble with that. So the first module, I focus on clarity or self-awareness. And I call it clarity because it's basically about understanding like what provides me with a sense of meaning and purpose. Because without that clarity of direction, everything becomes kind of like an option. It's almost like going on Google and hitting the I'm lucky button and expecting that something on the first page is something that resonates with you. And I believe that if we support people in developing their self-awareness, we can give them the keywords that lead them to finding better results and being able to evaluate their Odyssey plans, for example, in terms of, is this really me? Is this really something that if I go on this journey, might provide me with a sense of meaning, purpose, and maybe also a feeling of passion? For me, this started with like reading up on positive psychology and early works of Martin Seligman, which I think most of you know of. Like he's considered one of the founding fathers of positive psychology, and he looked into, generally speaking, what do we need to be happy, or how can we make people happy? And the latest framework that he presented, which you might be aware of, is called the PERMA model. And so here we look into different parts of our life. So for example, the R stands for relationships, and we identify like these different things that contribute to our happiness or fulfillment. However, he had an earlier model, and that's the model that I'm drawing on, where he tried to identify, okay, what are like general ways that we can experience happiness? And he came up with three. The first one is pleasure. And we all know about pleasure. Pleasure is like going on a shopping spree or enjoying ice cream or whatever like satisfies us in the moment. The only problem with that, it's temporary. It's not like extending over a longer period of time. So we have to actually consume or engage in certain circumstances in order to keep that up. And our industry, or the way our industry is driven in terms of consumption, is a good example of that. Now, there are two other ways that we can like experience like feeling happy or feeling content in the moment. And those two ways he labeled the good life, which is working or engaging in alignment with your strength. And so, as you know, like when you engage with your strength, you experience a feeling of flow. In that moment, like once the needs are absent and you're so immersed in the task that you feel a sense of fulfillment, right? And like flow, because time is out of the window and you don't see how time passes. Now, that's what he called the good life. And this is when you can get that when you work in alliance with your strength. Now, the second thing that he identified was the like purposeful life, which is if you do something that's of purpose to you. However, then the question is, what is purpose? And now, when you draw on William Damone from Stanford University, he proposed a definition of purpose that was something in line with that you contribute to something larger than yourself that is of value to you, as well as contributing or consequential to the self beyond you. So you basically, by engaging, you contribute to something bigger that you value. And by doing so, it's also of value to you. And when you do that, you actually feel transcendence. So you feel part of the bigger, you feel belonging. And when you do that, then you feel secure and you feel like, in a way, happy or fulfilled or purposeful in what you do. Because you see and you recognize that you actually have a contribution to something bigger that you value. Now, the interesting thing with those two is they strongly coincide with what we intrinsically value. And if you have looked into values or core values, just give me a raise of hand if you like have done value work in the past. No, 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 no. Okay. Michael, yes, no, no. Okay. So values are considered the things that we hold or that we understand as being right or wrong. Let me give you an example. If I ask you if you value freedom, most of you will nod their heads and say, like, yeah, I value freedom, right? And if I ask you, do you value democracy? And most of us, having been brought up in a democratic society, would say yes. Like, especially right now, we value democracy. But if you think about it, those two are not the same. They do not always go together. And there are situations in our lives where we're forced to choose. So how do we choose? What is more important? That gives you an indication of what you truly value. And most of the time, these values have developed over our upbringing. So we all have values that we hold dear and that we think is the right thing to do. It determines how we look on the world. It determines what makes us feel positive or motivated, and it determines when we feel frustrated. Most of the time, when something frustrates us, it goes against our values. For example, if we value perfection and something is done sloppy, like we want to do something about it. We feel that energy, right? And that is one reason why it's important to understand your values, because your values can tell you like when you get that energy, like in a positive or in negative way. But most importantly, values can also help you to identify your strength and your purpose, because it turns out that the strength, when you engage and when you feel fulfilled in the moment by doing what you enjoy doing, you're also confirming like what you value. And that's why this thing that we call a strength might have become your strength over time. It is because by doing it, you're confirming what you believe, you're confirming what you value. I will give you an example in a moment. So turns out when we have those two, we can aim at a fulfilled life. And one way to start this, to identify what our strengths are, what our sources of purpose are, is our core values, the things that are the most important and that we consider right. So how does that play out when it comes to us? And I give you a little personal example here. In a moment. So for me, one of the things that I really value is wisdom, a deeper understanding of things. I get annoyed when things are not thought through with myself and with other people. I get super excited when I all of a sudden understand something better, be it through like a session, like one of these sessions here, where I listen to somebody else, or through a book or reading a research article or watching a video. If I understand something better and it makes click, oh my God. And we all have that. But for me, this is something that I seek out. This is why I, for example, went into academia, because I wanted to deeper understand how industry works. Now, what is value in action? What is the strength that's correlated for me with value? So, as I told you, like our strength, like kind of fulfill what we value. In my case, that's learning. I love learning. I do binge learning over the weekend, which means that on Friday, I pick a topic that I'm interested in, and I will spend most of the weekend learning about this topic, taking notes in order to deeply understand a topic and write myself a guide or manual about this. I even did that when I started with Design Your Life. I tried to identify everything that was out there, tried to learn all of that, packed all of that into a massive PowerPoint, structured that PowerPoint in order to better understand what was going on. And I enjoyed this task tremendously. So as you can see, me doing learning fulfills what I intrinsically value, which is wisdom. Now, beyond that, I also love engaging in adult education. It's one of the reasons why I'm here. So the reason why I like being part of a group like this is because it allows me to learn and fulfills something that I deeply value, which is wisdom. So when I engage in adult education in a way that I learn, so for example, by engaging with my students and have a conversation with them and deriving a deeper understanding of that, I feel intrinsically like motivated. I feel fulfilled and I'm feeling like I'm doing the right thing. And so when we help people identifying these things, we can not only help them identify where they need to play or where they want to add value to the world or where they find purpose, which for me, for example, is an adult education, but we can also help them to understand how they ideally contribute in a way that they feel like what they're doing is of value for them, why they're doing it. And it starts with understanding what we really value. What's the thing that's driving us? What's the thing that we consider the right thing to do, the right thing to support? Now, I'll give you a second example and maybe think along here. I don't know if it's the same for you, and I want to have a conversation with you about this framework in a second. But just to give you a second one, one thing that I really value is self-determination. I hate being micromanaged, and I have a tough time sometimes working in larger organizations because of it. If like people restrict my like way of doing things too much, I'm likely to to go away. I'm likely to quit the job, which I am drawn, which is why I'm drawn to, for example, entrepreneurial settings much more than I'm drawn to like a traditional kind of 9 to 5. When we think about a strength, like what's a strength related to that? And I don't know what your strength is, what one of your values is, but if you have a value in mind, think about what's a strength related to my value. How am I expressing myself, or how am I expressing or acting in line with that value by doing? And for me, it's starting things. I love to start things. And that's like, it's a thrill for me because it expresses my self-determination. It draws on like my learning and my drive to deeper understand things. And so if you have been following me or if you know me from the past, like there's plenty of things that I started. I started networks, I started startups, started like courses, whatever. I just get a thrill of it. I enjoy it because there's no restriction and I can self-determine like what I'm going to do. Now, engaging in that makes me also prone to favor or in being interested in certain communities and certain people. And the people or the groups that I'm interested in naturally is like people going through, for example, transitions, because transition is a period, career transition is a period where you like want to self-determine. You want to figure out where you want to go next. And so I have like a high amount or a big amount of empathy and interest in those people going through this situation. I also love engaging with solopreneurs or entrepreneurs for that matter, because they are also like mostly self-determined and they have a drive to make that or to put that determination into practice. And so that just as an overview. Now, we could think that, well, this is great. It helps me to get some direction here, as the compass indicates, in terms of what I could be doing. So if you take this and you don't know anything else about myself, you would think like, okay, learning adult education, he could work in that, or he could start doing things people through transitions, solopreneurs. So maybe he could combine those things and engage with solopreneurs or entrepreneurs in an educational capacity, right? Which is something that I do. But I would be dismissed, or it would like, I think it would be like falling short of what this can do if we just focus on work. Yes, focusing on values and strength and sources of purpose can help you find fulfilling work or fulfilling career. And in our society, that's a lot. It's like where we spend most of our time. But the key is, I think, that it's not just about finding a fulfilling career. Because if one of these legs breaks in your career, for example, chances are you don't have anything else to stand on. And I've seen this, for example, with my dad. He was passionate about practicing medicine. He got sick, he couldn't do it anymore. And all of a sudden, his life lost meaning and he didn't feel fulfilled anymore. And so that's why I think it's like important to remind ourselves, remind students that fulfillment can not only be found in our work, it can be found with friends, family, volunteering, hobbies, so on and so forth. And we can bring these values and these qualities and our strength to these environments and really feel like that sense of purpose, belonging, transcendence, if you like, and flow, no matter which of these circumstances we go for. So that as a quick overview. And now I'm really interested in your thoughts and your criticism, your ideas, and your kind of personal reflections on this framework.
So first, thank you so much, Ingo, for your conversation. Can I just ask a practical question?
Yes.
So you give them the introduction in the framework, and then they are filling it out, and how much time, and how do you operationalize it in your work with your clients or classes?
Okay, sure. So this is just like a general framework, is an overview. And of course, like you have to help them identify like what the values are. And usually this is where I start, because the values can identify you where you want to contribute, as well as like what's the thing that you consider your strength that might be intrinsically motivating. And so a typical exercise, I'm just going to share a couple of worksheets with you here. One of the exercises is peak experiences. So if you have ever done value work, one of the things that I spoke to in the previously is that if you experience something that is aligned with your values, then you experience a high level of energy or motivation. You feel very happy or positive, which means that whatever event that you experienced in the last week, when you share that with somebody that's trained in value work and you basically talk about it, you will elicit most of your values. And so the way I would introduce this, I would ask them, hey, like, let me know something about any volunteers. What happened to you last week that felt great, that you felt like, oh my God, this was amazing. I would consider this a peak experience. And I just keep them talking, ask a couple of questions. What happens over time is there is a pattern. The person might say something like, oh, I played with my son last week, and I just enjoyed seeing the joy in his face when he was climbing and like experiencing that freedom, like running all over the place in our living room, like standing on the couch. I thought it was dangerous, but I couldn't, like, I didn't want to stop him because he has had so much fun, like expressing himself, right? And just by me saying that and thinking about my son, like you might have an idea about what I value. It's not that my son values self-expression or freedom or liberty. Like I value seeing that in his demeanor, in the way he expresses himself. So you can tell just by this short snippet, one or two things that I can value. And you can do that with anything. You could say, what was the best birthday present you ever got? Like, if you write this down, I guarantee you it will help you to better understand your values. So that's peak experiences. Another thing that you can do is superheroes, superpowers. I mentioned this exercise before. And how much time do we have? Do you guys want to do a short exercise?
I would rather talk, but what about the others?
Okay.
What
So
about the others?
But we have 1 hour, so we have still half an hour left.
No,
we still have half an hour.
Half an hour left.
It's fast. It's fast. Do you have a piece of like? Raise your hand if you want to do it. If the majority wants to do it, I will do it.
It's fast, yeah.
It's fast. Okay. Take a piece of paper. You can see it right here. 4 quadrants. You don't need the middle. Just 4 quadrants. In each one of the quadrants, write the name of one person that you consider a superhero to you. Now, that person can be dead or alive. It can be a fictional character. It can be a real life person. It can be in your family. So, for example, it can be your grandmother, or it could be your mother, or it could be like your brother or whoever it is. It doesn't really matter. Write down 4 people, 1 per quadrant, that you consider a superhero. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be the clerk at the checkout counter at Edeka. I don't know, right? So 4 people. And let me know or raise your hand when you have those 4 people. That's the first step. I'll give you mine. Chris Adris, which some of you might be familiar of. At the time I did it, Tony Stark, fictional character from Iron Man. Roger Martin was the dean, Rauth School of Management, University of Toronto. And Gary V, online marketer, pretty in your face, but at the time this one came up, so I put it down. So you don't have to share them, by the way. If this is something that you rather keep to yourself, it's totally fine. Like, just write down 4 of these. Okay, everybody got 4? If you have 3, it's fine too. Okay, Kate, how are you doing? How are you tracking? Got 4? Yes, perfect. Luco, thumbs up. Okay, next thing you do is you write down what makes them superheroes. Like, what is it about them that you consider being so great? And like, usually you do a drawing in the middle. You don't need to do that. Here are a couple of mine. So, for example, Chris Adris, for me, combines science and consulting, focuses on important issues or focused on important issues. With that, I mean very practical issues. When you read his stuff, he's a clear, sharp thinker. Tony Stark, science for impact, style, practices what he knows, right? So very hands-on. Roger Martin, great storyteller. If you have ever seen him presenting, wow. Creates relevance for things, for ideas. He's very good at that. Really, really deeply understands like the people that he's serving, which are leaders, executives. And he does his thing. And then Gary V puts himself out there, speaks his mind, follows his passion, not his past. So these are the things that I valued in these superheroes. And so you have a moment here to do the same. Try to find 2 or 3 per person, should be enough. And let me know whenever you're ready. Yay, Kate. Wow. That was fast. Assuming they were very inspirational. Can you share 1 or 2 people you put down? Not what you put down below, but just 1 or 2 people?
I've done it very, very quickly. I think if it's all right with you, I'm borrowing this exercise. I think it's fantastic. Do you know who I've put down? And this is a really interesting sort of subconscious thing. I've put down Queen Elizabeth I of England. I've put down Anna Wintour, who was the editor of Vogue. And I've put down an academic at work who's just really inspirational. I'm not going to name him because we're in.
Okay.
And I've put down someone else. But God,
I stopped you right there. I love the energy. I stopped you right there. I got to stop you right there. Everybody else done. Raise your hand when you're done. Okay. Barbara. Okay, cool. And I see some smiles on your faces because you probably already know what's coming because you're all very smart people. So what I want you to do right now is just cross out all the names. The names are totally irrelevant because this is all about you. So put your name in the middle. It's not about like what these people are or who these people are. It's what you value about these people that makes you point out these people. So this is how values drive our perception, right? And we can find them anywhere. I could ask you, what are the 4 companies that you most admire in the world? What are the qualities of these companies? And it will show you once again, like some of the values that you have, at least, or that you aspire for at the moment, because values are a little, they can be shifting. One thing that we experience, if a value is lacking, then, for example, we feel a deep sense of dissatisfaction and we focus on that one thing. And then everything that you will read here will speak to that one value that's lacking. It might not be something that you might value some other things more, but if something is lacking, it's like this little itch that you have from a mosquito bite, like you focus 100% of your attention to that itch, right? You're not focusing on anything else that you need to do, no matter if it's work or the conversation that you have with somebody else. Bettina.
So I have a kind of a adjustment of the tool, how it might be also valuable, because what Barbara and I have done is the 80s or 60s birthday, and you're writing down what the speeches are.
Right.
And to purposefully ask them, what are your political heroes? What are your work heroes? What are your friend heroes? In order to spark what are the values that are important for you in different areas.
In different domains, yeah.
In different domains. And Barbara, wasn't it that you introduced a tool where you're comparing pairs? Is it more like this or more like this in order to identify values?
Yeah, I mean, there are online a lot of tools how to find out values, and we use different tools, but one is online. Yeah, I can look it up and share it in the chat here. But
awesome.
But it's about it always shares, like, do you think it's more important freedom or more important harmony, or yeah, and then you get and then you get a result in the end.
Is it the personal value assessment?
I can look it up.
I think I know that one. Maybe I should clarify something. So no matter what you talk about, if it's values or strength, there are lots of assessment online. What I realized using these assessments is that if the language of the assessment doesn't resonate with you, you don't get the feeling in values. And if the strength doesn't resonate with you, for example, if you do a Gallup or a Clifton Strength Finder, you don't know what to do with it. So for example, one of my strengths is includer. Like, what do you make out of that? Like, I didn't know what to make out of that, right? So like what we're trying to do here, or what I'm trying to do with these exercises, is to keep them purposefully like in their own world and work with what they got, so they develop their understanding from where they are and not like based on something external that they would then need to interpret into like what they are doing. I think there's value to both, and both can be done. And it depends on also how much time you have. And so, for example, there is also like, I think overall there's 3 ways of going about these things. So if we speak about values, it's one, using a tool externally to you, like card sort. Main challenge I found with that is that people often select what they think they should value and not what they really value. So for example, if you ask me 10 years ago, do you value family? I would have said, sure, I value family. But like, if you look at my life, like my life tells you that I value self-determination over being around my family because I travel all over the place, right? So like, it takes some vulnerability and some kind of introspection in order to really like get down to the bottom of it. And so you have the option to let your life speak or to go external. If you go external, I think there's some challenges, and like I'm biased here. I love like more self-reflective exercise, but I think both can be done. Now, I hope this exercise told you something about yourself, by the way. Anything that you learned? Just curious. What is one thing that you're looking for?
So I really like the workaround, and that you have yeah, you have your own words. I think that is really great. I will immediately put that in. Maybe we can invite a friend of mine. Long is at Chaospiloten, and he's developing currently a workshop format on dilemma. And his insight was that a dilemma occurs when two values are confronted.
Yeah.
For example, you really value family, and you have family and work values.
Right.
And there is a conflict.
100%. Values can tell you a lot about like indecision or procrastination as well. So just to give you an idea on how this comes together, because Bettina asked me about this earlier. So what I typically do is I say, like, we did a couple of exercises. I also give them the value sheets printed out. So there's one scientific value validated list of values that I share for them to say, like, okay, what is missing? Is there anything missing, or is there anything that you couldn't find the word for? Here's a list. And then define for yourself 5 core values. I don't make them rank it. You could, but it takes a lot of time. Then I move on to strength, and then I move on to sources of purpose. One thing that I do is, because I'm like, I also want to show like immediate value of the things that you're doing. So why do you do values, right? It's like, okay, there's this complex framework, but what you get out of it. So to conclude the session, what I do is I give them a validation sheet. And basically what this is about is, like, you put your values in the top, and then you put relationships and like past jobs or careers that you had on the left. And then what you do is you map those to see, is there alignment or is that misalignment? If it's done right, if you named your value the right way, your values will explain to you what frustrated you about a past job that you didn't like, or what like excited you about a career opportunity that you have been engaging in. Same thing with your friends. It will show you why, for example, a friendship went sour, or why you were totally excited, like meeting this new person at a conference, and you want to hang out with them for the next couple of months in order to just enjoy this company, right? So this helps you in order to figure out, hey, like, what was a conflict, or what is at stake here? And it also can, to your point, Bettina, show you like, hey, there's a conflict in what I'm experiencing here, and where is this coming from? Like, what is missing here, right? I love my job, I love everything that I'm doing, but something is wrong, and I just like start to see all the bad things at work. Like, what am I missing? So this like validation can help. And just to walk you through the rest, so then we talk about strength. There are not a ton of good tools. If you have great tools, yeah.
May I ask?
Yeah, sure.
I
Barbara, go ahead.
find this is very, very interesting to break that like that analytically down, and of course you get great insights. So when I understand you right, in this table you get like fits, yeah. So
yep.
You get fits with your values, it fits with people or jobs, and then there is this minus where it was a conflict, or where you just don't have data, where it's like neutral.
Yeah. So if I don't have data, I put a question mark in. For me, it's like, this is very black and white way of displaying it. But yes, like for me, minus is didn't fit. Like there's a conflict there, right? So for example, April, like my partner, who I have a son with, she's not that much into wisdom. And that's totally fine. Like, she doesn't need to fulfill all of my values. I don't want to replicate myself. She has other things that I really, really admire in her. And so, for example, self-determination, like, she's amazing. Like, she has her own startup. She's really rocking it. And I love that about her. I love that she has her visions and her ideas, and that she puts action behind it. And so, like, wisdom, I don't need that from her, right? And so it doesn't mean that they have to be all X's, but it gives you an idea of like what is met and what isn't met. And it's basically a start of a reflection. This should never like be an absolute, but it gives you an indication and it gives you a way to articulate, for example, why a past job wasn't a job for you or why it turned sour. So for example, something that I often see, especially with people that just had their first career, like after an MBA, and a year, 2 years in, they go like, yeah, like, I'm not sure, like, I don't like my work anymore. I'm not sure what's wrong. And sometimes it is because they missed the challenge. They love being challenged. And after 2 years, they have mastered everything like they were supposed to master. They fit in, they do their role. And with that, the role becomes a drag. It's the same thing day in and day out. There's nothing new to learn. There's nothing new to challenge themselves with. And so they lose that like fulfillment of that value. And with that, they lose some of their motivation. So it doesn't mean that they need to find a new job. It just means like, okay, you are not challenged anymore. So what would be a meaningful challenge given your work that you have right now? Where do you want to go next? Getting clarity around that and finding the next challenge. So that could be like, and you probably came across this work on job crafting. So that might be, or design your work life if you like, that might be the way forward. It might not be like killing your job and moving on. Now, any other questions here? If like I'm happy to walk you through the rest. I wanted to have some feedback on the model, so I will probably take 10 minutes in the end. So in 2 minutes, but if you want to see the other worksheets, happy to share them. Yes? Looking at you here. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So what do I do for strength? One thing that is, it's based on a, it's the sources down here is basically based on a book. There's some, like in coaching, there's some strength interviews you can do. And here I just rapid fire 10 questions that can answer those to like figure out like what are some things that you wouldn't necessarily think about in the moment. So including what you say you love doing, what never makes it on a to-do list because it gets done immediately, so on and so forth. And so that's one thing. The other thing that I'm doing is job-related skills and interest. So this is as well as like skills and interest in your private life. So what you do is basically you list all the jobs, you list the ing words, so the things that you are doing at work, and you list the topics of focus, the thing that like you are working on basically. When you have that, it does two things. First of all, if you go through the list, you will realize there's some things when you read them, you're like, oh my God, yeah, I really enjoy that. And the other things where you're like, oh my God, I can't get myself to work doing this. Just give you the other examples. And by underlying those, you can understand like what are the things that you value. And usually that's also where your strengths are. So for example, if I just go back, sorry for this, that was not meant to be presented that way. If you see teaching, for example, something that I really enjoy getting into an educational role. And so for me, that was an immediate heart that I indicated. Then questioning, learning, understanding, coaching, they're different things. And I also noticed that in these different roles, I did things repeatedly. So what I usually would make students do here is to underline everything that resonates. So the way you feel is a great indicator for like where there might be a potential strength. Because in positive psychology, for strength to be a strength, it is not only something that you're good at, but it has to be intrinsically like motivating or satisfying, and you have to feel like you own it. And if you don't have that, it's probably not a strength, or it might not be a strength yet. When it comes to focus topics, these can usually help you to identify things that you causes or people or groups that you find purposeful. And so when it comes to purpose, this is also one of the worksheets you can use to get there. And so basically what I do here is like, I say like, okay, look at the strength interview, look at the jobs related skills and interest, and write down the strength. This is always just the first list. You can't expect somebody to figure all of this out in 30 minutes time, but it's a starting point. Now, one thing about strength that is sometimes mentioned is it's not the same as a skill. So cooking, managing, and Pictionary are not strength, even if you're good at them. The question is what makes you good at them? that usually leads you to the strength. So for example, ideation, if you're very good at ideation, you're very good at opening the fridge and like combining different things into a dish, right? You might be very good at managing others in a visionary way or leading others in a visionary way. You might also be very good at Pictionary, because once you see like a couple of scribbles, your mind automatically makes sense of it because you're so good. Like you might be called ideation or creative in coming up with what the final result could be like. Now, here again, you can map that to your career or to the jobs that you had, and you can see if you have been leveraging your strength or not. And with that, you can decide, hey, what could I bring to work that is a strength of mine that I've not been leveraging? Or where like your job felt like a drag, you would understand like why. Like if you don't engage with your strength, you can engage with your weaknesses, of course, and you can make them better. But then like every day will feel like an uphill battle and you're not restoring your willpower. There's research on that, different topic. And then last but not least, I asked them to do to ask a friend. So this is a QR code they can scan with that text. They copy and paste that via WhatsApp over the break, send it out to a couple of friends that know will respond, to identify, because that's the best way actually to know about your strength, is to ask others about how you showed up when you were at your best, where you did that, and what did you do. And if you get those, then you basically get a little bit of an outside perspective. Coming to the sources of purpose. So as I mentioned already, like you have this initial sheet where you know about like topics that you engaged in or things that you like find purposeful. And what I found about purpose is that it can always be translated. If you have, for example, a cause, let's say sustainability is something that you're interested in, you can always ask, what are the communities and organizations that engage in the same cause? If you do that, you find areas of engagement. So for example, I'm interested in adult education, and I can go out there and ask myself, okay, what are the organizations and communities that actually are working towards that, contributing towards that, right? And so we have institutes of higher education, we have leadership development firms, we have assessment firms, we have like all kinds of organizations. So for example, MEA, Modern Elder Academy, I did an internship there a couple of years ago, like is one of those. And with that, you can seek those out and find people and find places that make you derive a sense of purpose when you engage there. So it gives you a little bit of direction. And then of course, like once you have put these all in, you can also go the other way around, by the way. So for example, if you know somebody that you have a great time communicating with, you can ask yourself, what is this person, or who is this person part of? What communities and organizations is this person part of? So for example, if I take Bettina, I know she's part of this group. I know she's part of like the group of educators around the world that are educating people in design your life, as well as you are as well, right? So I already know, like from knowing Bettina, that the group that she's in and that like the stuff that we talk about is probably represented there and might help me find an environment that I want to engage in. And then the question is, how do you engage? Well, then you can look at your strengths and say like, okay, what if I combine that strength with that group or community? Could that be a job? Could that be a volunteer opportunity? Whatever it is. And these are the ideas for purposeful life or for fulfilling future. Okay, now I'll stop myself. And we have 5 minutes left. So if you have questions regarding this or comments or critique, I would love to hear it.
Just a question again. When you are working with people, what is the time frame for the exercise? So you showed us how it works. Of course, it needs, is it a day or 2 days, or are you structuring in slices with time in between?
Yes. So the minimum you will need to fill this in, like in a way that people have time to digest it. And there's always like think, share, pair. So there's always time to think individually and then discuss it with somebody else in order to get a perspective. So for what I just walked you through, you will probably need half to 3/4 of a day. So there's no way around it. And even then, it will take a little while for it to make click. Now, one of the other things that allows you to do, so you will, in my work, I always come back to that. So for example, if you have an Odyssey plan, right, you could say, like, do you like that, or do you enjoy that, or like, how do you rate that, right? But you could also ask, is it aligned with what I value? Is what I need to do in order to go on this journey aligned with what I consider my strength to be? If not, like, can you make it in alignment with your strength, and with that make the journey easier, right? Because, for example, when you do Odyssey planning or Odyssey mapping, you always, or I saw people always starting with outcomes. And the problem with outcomes, it gives you no indication of the journey. So once you start and say like, hey, like, map what you are doing in these years, not necessarily what you're going to achieve, like a bag of cash or whatever it is, right? Then all of a sudden you can understand if this journey is something that you're prepared for, or if this journey is something that will make you face some challenges. So for example, people will say like, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur, or I want to become like an expert, or I want to become like a speaker, well, or a coach. Are you prepared to do the marketing that you will need to do in order to do that? Is this something that you will enjoy? And if not, is this really your journey, or is there another expression of what brings you joy and fulfillment that can like get you to like a fulfilled life? And so I'm bringing these back. It will take some time to fill them in. Barbara?
I have two questions. One is,
Yes.
you in the beginning you started with module 1, clarity. Was this now all module 1, and are there more modules, or was this the whole
Yes.
thing? That's the one question.
So like,
And
yeah, okay.
and
Second?
and the second is, you said you're doing that with PhD students and also executive education. And what is the difference? Which group would you say works better, or has more need, or is more open for it?
So yes, there are more modules. So you can work them through the design thinking process if you want, depending on how much time you have. That's great, especially when you can iterate and make them prototype. If you have very little time, so for example, in executive education, you sometimes don't have the luxury to run live experiments. So the question is, how do you leave them? I would say this is one of the differences. If I run a private group, I would run them like, get them through this, but get them to experiment and practice as soon as possible, because the value like comes from reflecting and continuously engaging. Like, it is great if you run this workshop for a weekend, for example, people will leave all excited. They know what they want. They have a lot of energy, right? They have a lot of passion for what it is they're going to experience, until they run into the first barriers. And so when it comes to programming or designing for each audience, I think it's super important to understand, okay, what context are they embedded in? Is this a bunch of people that just is looking for their next career move and they have time and energy? Or is this like a group of executives that are not necessarily looking into like, hey, I want to debark from my journey here, right? And so the intentionality that you bring is different. Now, how much time you have on this is also determining how much ideation you do, for example, in the next step. When you think about the future, like, we all spend very little time thinking about the future. There's some studies suggesting that we spend about 10 minutes thinking about the future per month in terms of long-term future, and we're not very good at it. So then it's not so much for an executive, it's not so much about like, hey, I want to like depart from that, I want to have a different career. It could be, but it's more important about to address where they want to go, what is their ambition, right? And then help them in understanding how this could support them. Also, in terms of the Odyssey map, it's not necessarily 5 years, because the timeframes of their jobs, of their careers, they completely differ. And so, like, sometimes it's thinking about the next year, because what's top of mind of them is that they just had a performance review and they need to find a way to like change the way they engage at work. And so the purpose is completely different, right? And then where you, in terms of also how you speak to them, how you use the material, one difference that I found is that in my MBA classes, students are more hungry for research and for slides and data and statistics. And on an executive level, depending on how they enroll, if they are enrolled, they want to have a little bit of legitimacy, and they want to see like, okay, what's the research behind this? How do we know that, like, if I like go for purpose or go for meaning or work alongside my strength and like focus on those, like how would that impact the way that I work or my performance? So they're more interested in that. But if they self-enroll, they're usually hungry for progress. They're not necessarily hungry for legitimacy or justification. And so they want to engage. Overall, what I found consistent in these groups, no matter which groups like I work with, is that fostering engagement, meaningful engagement, and conversations about what they discovered is the number one thing that I would never shortcut on or never compromise, because it's in these moments where reflection happens. It's in these moments where connection happens. It's in these moments where like the energy builds, the excitement builds. So like that's what I would offer like top of my head. But if you have more questions, let me know.
I'm looking a little bit on the time.
Yes.
Ingo, is there something you are looking for, something you need? Because currently on the mailing list are 50 people. It is as you might recognize, they're very busy. Is there something you are looking for, and you might help of the community?
Thank you for offering that. So what I'm super curious about, and Bettina, thank you for offering some feedback already and some ideas already. So I want to write this up as a framework for everybody to use. It was helpful to me. I don't know if it would be helpful to you or if you would use something like this. But I generally look for feedback, ideas, recommendations, even if it's like, this is not useful. Like this is way too much. Like, don't do that with students, right? If it's that's totally fair. And I want to hear about your experience. So one thing that I want to do is I want to write this up and I want to get people's opinion on it, and feedback. And so if that would be something that I could share with this group, and where you would go through like a couple of pages, I promise not to make it too long, but just to clarify, okay, this is what I'm drawing on, this is the logic, this is how I construct this, this is my thinking around this. If you could give me some critique and feedback, that would be amazing. I would love to do that.
If it's okay for you, I have some thoughts. So what I observed is that most of the people have now a website to the book. Also, the first author you mentioned, she has now a new book, a blue one, not just a red one, so that there is book and website. And what I also recognize is that many of the books I find very sympathetic are not these business cleaners. They have a little bit more human touch. It is getting in a graphical element, has sketches, and so it is a little bit playfulness. What I also recognized is that, thank you, Michael, that many or some of them are using the tools, the canvases. They have the canvases to be downloaded and Creative Commons. And I thought that is kind of smart, that you have something to buy, something to share for free. And what I missed, and you have done that perfectly, is often how do the things belong together? How do they build on? And a kind of a use case that is filled out and is going through. And that was what I missed in so many others. But that's me. Any other feedback for Ingo?
Just before I have to dash, but Ingo, such a fantastic presentation. Thank you. Me personally, I can't stand doing grids. I'm a drawer or a scribbler. And so I loved the superheroes one because you were getting into my subconscious. I hate being constrained by grids and being asked to cross-reference things, but that's just to do to personality type.
Thank you.
It's worth.
I also want to highlight, Michael, thank you for your comment here. You said you're using a similar exercise, or you're using this exercise, and you have a different source here, which I will definitely check out. So thank you for providing that.
I'm on the same thing. So I'm from the career management area, and so my finding on career management is curiosity. If you look at Savika, Seligman, and Krumboltz, the key skill or strength, I don't know which one you call it, is curiosity. Curiosity of self, curiosity internal, curiosity external. That's my parting shot. Thank you so much. I'll find you on LinkedIn.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to connecting. Okay. With that, thank you.
I can also say thank you, and very inspiring from how you approach this topic and your worksheets, and also the content, like your examples about yourself. I can really, I don't know if the others also feel like that, or if we have some, but I feel in many ways have the same values, or can really understand very much what you're talking about. So it's very interesting also to see what you are doing with the values you have, and with the insights you found about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
And
we should connect more often.
That will be my pleasure. Thank you. I think it also speaks to like what I said earlier in terms of if you engage with people that share your values and engage in their communities. So thanks again, Tina, for the invitation. You will find people with similar values. And with that, you will find belonging, confirmation, and in some instances, transcendence, right? And so thank you for bringing us home here, Barbara, because I think this is, for me, this is like confirming what I talk about, not necessarily saying that it's true for everyone and everything, but just like a nice way to end this. So thank you.
Thank you. So I stop the recording here, and